Hi, my name is Near.
And my name is Cora.
And you're watching Anime TV. Anime. It's everywhere. That's why we're here. You can legitimately go to Netflix, Hulu. I've said this before. I'll say it again. It's everywhere. But that's why we're here. The crew of Anime TV. We're nerds. We're losers. And we're proud.
I'm not a loser.
I wear it like a badge of honor. But one of the biggest things that I can do is help you find what animes are good to watch. And then when everybody tells me that I'm wrong, that's generally most of the time. That's why I have them, so they can tell me that I'm wrong and then find the real good animes to watch. So let's start watching some anime. Oh, we're back in high school, and it was just like normal high school experiences. We're done with studying, because who wants to study? I don't like studying. That was the whole topic of last week's anime. So now we move on from studying and playing with danger, maybe jump in front of a car, maybe you don't survive, decide to still go to school anyway. You know, the usual, right? That's what I did anyway. That was all of sophomore year.
I will point out, I don't think they're in high school.
They're probably in middle school, but that's how I spent my sophomore year of high school. So that's kind of the topic of this week's anime, Yu Yu Hakusho.
And so it all begins. This boy's name is Yusuke. He's 14 years old and is supposed to be the hero of this story.
Oh, yes, shopping. My mother wanted me to go shopping after school. Yes, I'll just have to clean this room later on.
Oh no, I got the tickle feeling.
In other words, your death was a complete and utter waste.
Do I? Yeah!
Yu Yu Hakusho was created in 1995. It's a fantastic anime. You follow the character Yusuke Urameshi as he, at the beginning, he tries to prove that he's not such a bad guy. I mean, mostly what you see of him is wanting to get into fights, and he's the typical thug kind of character. He fit into Cromartie very well.
He also skipped school a lot, so you gotta, he was a delinquent.
Man, what kind of schools are there that you can just go ahead and hang out on the roof, skip classes? Like, I didn't have those types of schools. Like if a child was missing, you put up the red alert and people were everywhere. You were found. Like, we had that kind of leniency in my high school for like the first year that I was there. And then it disappeared. Like, you could go off campus to go eat like fast food down the street. And then, but no, technically because we were in a bad area, that was bad for us. I see that as a common trend in anime where you can just go out and do whatever you want and just skip school and people will be okay. There's legitimately an anime I used to watch that had a guy literally not go to school for a year, but then he decides to go back like every so often and still continues to like move along in the school, and I just don't get it.
That boy should have been expelled.
I mean, Yusuke probably should have also been expelled, but he towed that line.
So I tried to get as far into this anime as I could, and I still don't know if I like it or if I hate it or what's going on.
Give me a break.
Like, generally with older animes, like I just have a tough time in getting into older storytelling, but a lot of older animes don't do that as well. This is like on that line of where it's starting to go from older to like not old school, I guess you could say, but where the most classic generation of anime fans came into when like Naruto showed up, Dragon Ball Z, stuff like that. So it had that kind of similar feel to it without actually having that feel to it. So for years, I have been hearing about Yu Yu Hakusho from like friends who absolutely love the series and everybody's like obsessed with it, but not in like an annoying, obsessive way. There are a lot of animes that have that type of fan group that'll just get in your face about it. This did not have that type of fan group. I will admit that. It never once had that, you gotta watch it. It's the best thing ever. Oh my God, Morty, just gotta got to get right in there. It's just, it never had that, but also nobody ever told me what it was necessarily about.
It's not that it's like, it's kind of difficult to explain it sometimes what it's about, but that's mostly because it's like, trying to explain this, we go into spoilers real quick, because the first episode, it starts out, there's no like, let's have an episode to establish, who these characters are. No, we're gonna use half that episode to maybe establish some characters, then we're just gonna throw you right in.
And so it all begins. This boy's name is Yusuke. He's 14 years old and is supposed to be the hero of this story. But oddly enough, he's dead.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it did. It threw you in and then immediately kind of backtracked itself to show you what happened to that point. And I don't know if I liked that or if I hated that. There are certain cases with animes that do that, though. Generally, they'll have like the giant lead up to say, hey, look, there's stuff coming up. You just got to wait for it. And again, you either love that or hate it. We'll give you an example with like Boruto here. It starts off in the coolest way, and then you have a year and a half of stuff that I just didn't care about. But like all of a sudden, I'm like, okay, well, I knew that. Like I knew for a fact that the main character was dead. And then 5 episodes in, he's not dead. And I kind of assumed that the entire reason, like the entire series was him being dead and fighting ghouls and goblins and demons and stuff like that. Kind of like how Bleach was, but not Bleach.
Yeah.
So, and that's always the kind of assumption I knew. I just knew that there was a character in green all the time. He had some friends and he shot stuff from his finger. And that was basically what I knew. And then I went in and it was not like that throughout most of the entire series up to the point where I actually got to. It still wasn't like that. So I think one of the problems that I'm having with getting into the series is I have for years thought it was one thing and then it's not. And I'm having trouble getting over the fact that it's not that.
It does become that. I will say it does become that. It takes a little bit because what Yu Yu Hakusho does really well is character development. You have Yusuke and you have Kuwabara and Hiei and Kurama, and you meet all of them towards the beginning, and you slowly get to watch as their character like actually grows instead of like fake growth. You see different things that happen that actually make them better. And actually, at the point you had left off, if memory, yes, is when Kuwabara and Yusuke actually have a nice arc where you get to see some growth and you actually get to see Yusuke get stronger.
And that was kind of the whole deal. Is back when, like I said, this was kind of like an older school anime, but it ran for a very long time. So a lot of those animes that have that long of a time have a lot of good character development. I didn't see that character development. I saw a little bit with Yusuke, who I just did not like in the beginning, and I still don't like right now. It's one of those things where, you know, he wants to be a punk, but he's also not a punk. So it was one of those things where it was different than like when we watched Cromartie, and still don't know how I feel about that anime entirely. But it was one of those things where he was completely, you know, not a punk that everybody saw him as, but then at the same time, he wasn't afraid of throwing his fists just ever as like his first resort. So it almost seemed like the two personalities conflicted.
It's funny, Yusuke. None of us were expecting you to die today. You've thrown us all for a loop. Run someone with your credentials through that scenario 1,000 times and they never would have saved a kid like that. No one saw it coming, and quite frankly, we haven't prepared a place for you yet.
And it's so weird to watch somebody have two different kind of personalities at the same time. And not like in a medical sense. He just flip-flopped like a light switch. But it also, it just didn't fit. I was having trouble following that, but I also liked some of the characters. Like, I cannot remember his name. Kuwabara is what I think it is. Like, I really liked him.
Kuwabara's so loyal to his friends, I'll have to make a note.
Oh, yes, he's so brave.
Now's really not the time.
What is this, Kuwabara? Are you actually running away like a sissy?
Oh, no. I'm not going anywhere.
Oh, the tall one with He's great.
Voiced by Chris Sabat, who I didn't realize was even Chris Sabat at first, and I'm just sitting here going, what is happening? Like, he was one of those people that clearly showed that he liked Yusuke, but wanted to just use his fist for everything, and they had that entire episode dedicated to Kurabara, and I think that was one of my favorites.
Yeah, cool.
And, like, I related in a way because he also, like, oh, well, I'm going to go steal some stuff. And granted, he doesn't steal anything, but he does it for the sake of his cat. And during that entire episode, I'm holding my cat. And I'm just like, I get it. I understand. I, too, would probably go and rob a store for my cat. Just leave my cat out of it.
Like, Kuwabara is honestly one of the best characters in the show. When I first started watching this back in high school, I didn't appreciate him as much. I thought he was annoying. But
I can see that.
Yeah.
But
I related to him.
When I watched it again when I was older and my taste had matured and everything, I was like, why did I hate him? He's the best.
Probably one of my favorites. I think the other favorite that I like is also just King Yama Jr.
Koenma.
The toddler. And I'm just... Like, his personality was gold, and I was like, you know what? If I was in that particular position, I also would probably be a toddler because why not?
Where is he? Is he invisible? I'm right here. Look down. Yes, there you go.
I mean, all the scariest characters are always the ones that look like they're the non-threatening. Like Dragon Ball Super has Zemo, who's just this baby. You're just like, yeah, he could kill you with a blink. You're like, oh, okay. Sure. I like Botan. Botan was cool. I liked her voice a lot.
Yes. That's another thing Yu Yu Hakusho has that I really appreciate. I don't hate the female characters. They don't get on my nerves. Keiko can.
I liked Keiko a lot too.
But she's wonderful. She's that mother hen type character, but it's not just, you shouldn't do this, you really shouldn't do this. It's, I'm not letting you do this, and like actually trying to keep Yusuke from doing something ridiculous.
Whoa, Keiko, get the hell away from there! That's my body!
Quiet down! This is a perfect chance to investigate her. She can't hear us anyway.
There were a lot of moments with most of those characters. Like, the more I think about it, the more I just hated Yusuke and loved everybody else. It was just one of those things where I'm confident he grows on people. I get it. It's the same thing with Naruto. Everyone hates Naruto in the first, 20 episodes, but then he's, super awesome throughout the entire series. It's just the same concept with Yusuke. I liked every other character so far, and then when Yusuke comes back to life, he starts getting better as well. It's just, I couldn't gravitate towards that character, but Botan was just clever, and I loved her.
Why do you say things you don't mean? You know she only scolds you because she actually cares about you. Sayaka, I've learned not to listen to him most of the time. He's just embarrassed is all. He's got the cutest crush on Keiko. Huh?
And Kurabara was hilarious in his own way, while at the same time, all of the other characters you met were really funny, and not in an in-your-face type of funny. It was just the same way that you would talk to your normal friends, where she's just like, yeah, I just learned to ignore them. And I'm like, I've heard that a lot during our meetings here. It's just... So it was weird, because I didn't like the beginning, I should say, the parts where he's dead. At first, I thought that was really interesting. I was like, okay, cool. He's dead. There's a premise here. We're going to move on. He's going to probably go save some people. And then, okay, the idea of the ordeal possibly taking up to 4 years, because I know that the series is supposed to last over a course of 4 years. I was like, that sounds like a pretty interesting premise where stuff just keeps escalating. All right, that's cool. I get it. And then it didn't happen that way, because instead it was these little errand episodes, which almost felt like filler episodes, but they were the main story to start with. And it just took too long. It was one of those things where I generally try to give things more than 3 episodes if it's an anime, because I know how long animes can take. But this just didn't feel like it, and didn't feel like anything related. Like the Spirit Beast. They're spending so much time talking about him feeding energy into this egg, and then he wastes it. And I'm like, okay, cool. I'm really interested to see more about the Spirit Beast. And then nothing else came from it. I know that there is one. I did look that up. But even then, I'm like, okay, well, we're still here. Now we're not going to talk about it, but one's going to come up again. And I know it's just tough to go through knowing something like that's going to happen.
Yeah, that's understandable.
Yeah, But like I said, I don't hate the series by any means. Like, it's one of those things where I honestly bought the first season years ago to try to, because I wanted to watch it because everybody kept talking to me about it. Plus, it was $5 on iTunes, and who's not going to take that sweet deal? So I bought it, and I intend to go through all of season 1. It's just not grabbing me the same way. And it was one of those things where it's the same reason I hadn't watched it that entire time up to that point, because I just didn't want to. So we got to this week, and I was like, I gotta watch this. I just gotta watch it. And I sat down, and it was more amusing than I thought, because I still ended up watching episode after episode after episode, and then waking up the next morning and be like, okay, I have some time. Let me go ahead and watch this one. So it was a good anime. I get where the hype comes from. I just haven't watched enough, but I wish it would happen faster is what I'm getting at.
Right. See, when I first started watching this, it was, of course, on Adult Swim years ago. And even then, apparently, they cut Yu Yu Hakusho. Fun story. If you've never seen it uncut, it's a lot more blood. But I started watching it at the 3rd arc, I believe. The Saint Beasts. I believe that's like the 3rd arc. And so, like, the first episode I ever saw was Kurama showing how much of a badass he was. And it was like, okay.
See, and I haven't gotten that far. Like, with Kurama, I'm just like, I don't care about you at all. Like, I get that he's being nice and trying to save his mother, but at the same time, like, during that entire span, I had nothing to go off of except for, okay, so you like your mom. So does, like, 80% of the world.
The next time he shows up, you get to see more of him.
Yeah, I guarantee it. I even saw it in the next episode trailer, that with the episode I left off at, which was, I think, like episode 8. I know he's supposed to be in that episode. It's just, okay. It follows the same. This show follows the same trope that most of those animes do, especially with longer running animes. It's, I fight the guy that's bad. All right, cool. We're done. Now I fight the next bad guy. He's even stronger. All right, we're done. Now I got to fight the next one. It follows that same trope, which, like, you know, Bleach, One Piece, Naruto, all of them, they all do that.
All I gotta do now is get back the last treasure, and I've still got 3 days. From that monster guy. What's his name?
Hiei. And listen to me carefully. He's the toughest one by far, both cunning and ruthless. He'll do anything to get what he wants.
So something like YuYu, which I know only has 112 episodes, which is still 112 episodes.
It is.
It's one of those things where if you enjoy it, that's great, because now you have 112 episodes to watch, while some of my favorites that I never expected to be my favorites only have 13, and I'm like, I'm happy you ended there, but I want more. But
you know, turn my mic on. You bring up a good point about, like, this is about the fans. This is a beloved series.
Yeah,
I think because it came along during that, like, late 90s portion where they were playing it on.
Yeah,
they were playing it on Toonami too.
They weren't playing it on Toonami where I was, because it was too adult. They were playing it only on Adult Swim, because I remember waking up at like midnight and it with my TV on and it was playing.
It took me a season to get into the show, and then I really liked it. Like, towards the end of the first season, I got hooked on this anime.
There's a lot of shows that'll do that, where sometimes you just have to skip season 1 to get to it, but then you lose all of the beginning parts of it. So even non-anime related, I had to do that with The Office. It's just certain shows do that, but in this case, I think you need that first season. But I think that's one of the reasons why, even though I'm on the border of do I like it, do I hate it, it's the fan base that has really convinced me that I need to continue watching it, because those fans don't get in your face.
I also think, though, you may not be a fan of that first season. It's a good foundation to build off of.
Yeah. Yes, and as the show goes on, they'll, like, things that you were like, well, what about that thing? They will come back and, like, kind of give explanations for them. The show itself will get better villains, and they don't just disappear. Some of them do, but that's because they were literally eviscerated. But there are certain villains that get away, and they do come back. They consistently stay a threat instead of, oh, well, they're gone, so we don't have to worry about them right now. No, Yusuke's like, no, we're gonna worry about this because that was bad.
Well, yeah, and that goes with the topic of some of those other series, like Naruto does the same thing, where you have a character that was introduced in, like, the beginning that's still a threat towards the end of the series. It's those are always good, which is why I'm willing to keep going, because it's one of those things where it's giving me that feel that it's gonna do that. But like I said, just to the point where I am, the pacing feels weird as well. It's just, I know for a fact based off of what I've heard that it gets way better. But if it hadn't been for like this show and the fact that I bought it for $5, I don't know if I would have ever actually sat down and watched it. Like if someone had just said, "Hey, watch the first 3," I wouldn't have probably kept going. But to be fair, like I said, it's the fan base that really convinced me.
Yeah. I will say, like, Yu Yu Hakusho is not without its flaws, obviously.
Yeah, well, every show does.
The biggest issue I have with the show is after the Dark Tournament. That's about, I believe the Dark Tournament was about halfway, a little over halfway.
That's one of my favorite parts of it, by the way.
Yeah, it's the longest arc that they have, and it's honestly the one that I think they did the best. Because you have a tournament style thing, kind of like DBZ, but there's a lot more on the line than just winning the tournament. They're trying to beat a specific team, because that team can literally destroy the world.
So like where Super was currently last at.
Yeah, kind of.
That was the coolest arc in Super.
But the arc itself was really well done. You got a lot of really great new characters. All of them fantastic. Some of them just weird, but all of them great foils and opposites for them to fight. And then after that, you have 3 more arcs. And they, like, the one right after was really good. But then the one after that felt lacking. And then the one after that was just a...
And that just comes down to the tropes of those types of series. Like My Hero Academia does that, Naruto does that, all of those, like the big ones that everybody always knows about, do the same thing because they're long running. They want to keep them going as long as possible. But like I said, it just starts off slower, which makes total sense in this case because he doesn't have powers. He's a human kid.
Yeah.
And that, like, they
kind of given
stuff.
And
even with in the original one where they were just like, look, even when he's dead, all he did was float because he was just a ghost. And then when, I'm going to keep calling him King Yama Jr. shows up, he just kind of goes, by the way, you'll have cool powers now. And I'm like, okay, so he gets the powers. That makes sense. So, of course, it would only make sense that he would learn one by one by one. So right now he has the one-shot spirit gun only once a day. So I was like, that makes sense. I just wish that he knew more and they kind of sped it up a little bit to continue some of the cooler fights. Because, I mean, the same thing happened with every other series out there. Everybody has some kind of arsenal in there that makes the fights cooler. And then, of course, by the end of the series, it's just so ridiculous that it makes no sense how we've gotten here.
And actually, the next arc that you would be going into is where he starts learning more.
Yeah. I mean, overall, I think it's good. I didn't like the opening soundtrack. Nothing against it, per se. It definitely fit with the theme of what was happening in those first seasons, but I didn't feel hyped when I watched it.
Yeah.
And which makes sense. It's not that type of theme to do that. I liked the ending theme. I just didn't like the beginning theme. But I guarantee you that those themes probably hype you up the closer you get to more action.
Yeah.
So.
And on that, I was talking to you about this before. The opening theme in Japanese, they basically just took that theme and wrote it in English and kept the same theme for the show. And I love when they do stuff like that. It's something that seems kind of minor in the grand scheme of the show itself, but it means that if I go to watch it in Japanese, it's still the same.
So like One Piece.
No.
Cool.
No, God. No. No.
Y'all been talking a lot about
4 kids.
You know, Kurama and Yusuke, which I haven't really touched on the other two, who are equally as important in this anime.
Yes.
I just haven't gotten that far, like I said. But
well, then shut up and let her talk about these other 2 characters. Since you ain't gotten that far. Centralized.
No, it's no secret. Kurama's my favorite. I think, like, because he's...
I've been waiting for this part of it.
He's the stereotypical pretty boy for the anime. He's the Bishonen character. But he's not the frail character. He's actually one of the more powerful characters in the show. And even Hiei, who is like generally considered the most powerful, is like, I don't with that. And it's great. He's also one of the kindest in the show.
And arguably also, he is like doing research. He's the second most popular character for this anime.
Kurama?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. He's a pretty boy. Which means that he's...
With a thorn whip.
with a thorn whip, which...
What?
It's no ordinary flower.
Rose whip.
Yes, when he, and I'm just gonna talk about this because it was like the biggest power move I've ever seen. That when they go to fight in the Saint Beast Tower, they fight a rock monster, and everyone's like, "Well, how do we fight this?" And Kurama's just like, "I got this," and he steps forward. And he's like, "Okay," and he pulls a rose out of his hair, and everyone's like, "Okay." It turns into a whip that can crush stone. They're like, "Okay." It was like the, "Oh, well, that's not going to do anything," turned into the, "Oh, okay."
Now I don't know if I'll ever go back in my...
And he has other powers.
Oh, the fox demon?
That's not technically a power.
That's just who he is.
Yeah, I mean, he is...
That was one of the cooler moments for that character.
Oh, man, that
During
was...
the tournament.
That tournament screwed me up, man. You have an episode where Kurama almost dies. I mean, you have an episode where every one of them almost die because it's a tournament of humans fighting demons. It's gonna happen. But that one was hard.
Well, it's those moments you look at the characters and you have to remember there's some demon things going on here. Like, yes, they look human. But
No, especially not Hiei. Dear God, Hiei becomes OP so quick.
Yeah, he's okay. Moving on to Hiei. Terrifying.
He may be short, but he is absolutely terrifying.
And leave the headband on.
Leave the headband on, and the only person that really the person that only ever really like tries to argue with him is Kuwabara, and I think that's because Kuwabara has exactly one brain cell that he shares with the Void. Like he's not smart. He's intelligent enough in combat and stuff like that, but he is not a smart boy. So he picks fights with Hiei all the time, and Hiei just kind of accepts it.
One of the most dangerous people out there. The mini-eyed form that he has. I want to say I'm not Van Dread. I'm stuck on Van Dread. Van Helsing. Kind of maybe rip that off a little bit.
Or if you prefer, I'll make you into a demon. What's that? You want me to choose? Fine!
Maybe, but I would have to research which came first. Either way, many-eyed monsters are not uncommon to Japanese folklore.
And that's always been creepy in Japanese folklore. When like it's a shadow and then like multiple eyes just open up on the body. Like you want to go, well, that don't look dangerous. I could just throw a needle and mess him up. But it's just somehow creepier.
And with Hiei, because he also has a lot of speed on his side, he can see wherever you are now, and he can stab you very quickly. You're screwed. And he's not even the most powerful demon. And that's, I think, what makes it him even more unsettling. He's like, wait, you're not the strongest? Oh, Lord. Okay. Okay.
So you have to get further into this.
I will admit that one of the fun things that I was doing was trying to listen out for certain voice actors because I could recognize certain names. It was one of those things where, like, when Kuwabara spoke, I was like, I do not know who this is, only to find out that it was Chris Sabat. And I was like, of course I know who this is. But then, like, when Yusuke was talking, I was like, I know that voice. Who is that voice? It's Justin Cook, who plays Kirishima on My Hero Academia. And I was like, of course, he's doing the exact same voice for both characters, just slightly different.
Yeah, good cast on this one, too.
Oh, yeah. I honestly do like the cast. Like, Hiei, I recognized his voice instantly. I just couldn't remember where. And I was like, well,
Chuck Huber.
Yeah, and I was like, of course, it's Android 17.
He's also super nice.
And John Bergemier is Kurama's voice?
Yes, I believe so. Don't quote me on that.
Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of good characters. Like, I'll say, like, the casting was done really well. Like, you have Laura Bailey, who's playing Keiko, and Laura Bailey's in everything. It's just, like, the voice acting I thought was phenomenal, especially with the retro style because of when it came out. Like, those were the type of performances you were expected to get with those types of animes, but that could either go one really good way or one really bad way. I'll say it tipped towards very good, because there was the way that they were doing those like inflections with different screams and stuff, and it wasn't all just yelling. I honestly loved the voice acting. I think they did a great job.
And funny story, David Hyder actually voiced Kurama in the English in the first film. So
I will say real quick, just on the subject of one of the movies, actually no, both of the movies that have come out for this, they've changed the cast, and I did not like them at all. The first one, like there was one that came out that was like a 30-minute movie or something. That one was weird. Don't watch it.
It's off-putting.
It's very off-putting. The animation was like they suffered a very low animation budget. It's very obvious. They didn't get the same voice actors to come back for it, even in the Japanese. Like it was bad. And then you had Poltergeist Report, which was a better movie in comparison to the 30-minute whatever that was.
She already knew where I was going. She saw the look on my face and knew.
I was passing by and noticed you might need a little weed whacking done.
It's Kurama!
Hey, alright, there's Hiei too!
With the golden seal at risk, I figured you guys could use some extra help.
Like, it's a better movie considering the 30-minute movie, but I didn't like how they wrote the characters. It's clear that the original writer was not part of this, I don't think, or if he was, I don't know what he was writing.
And I haven't looked into like all that other movies and everything.
Yeah, well, I mean, those
I've seen them. I haven't looked into like cast.
Yeah, I could just hear that they were different, and the fact that Kuwabara was different meant that I couldn't watch it because it was someone trying to get Chris Sabat's gravel voice, and they couldn't.
No one can get Chris Sabat.
Lex
Okay?
Lang. You're familiar with that guy?
Yeah, like he did an admirable attempt, but it was not good. I suffered through it because I went through the trouble of like fighting to find it at the movie store, like the movie rental place.
You don't need these movies for the series. Though.
You don't.
They're completely standalone.
They're completely standalone. They have nothing to do with the story, and as a matter of fact, they retcon stuff for the movie, and I didn't like it.
They do a lot of that stuff with certain movies. This goes back to the trend of just those long-running series. Like, I have no knowledge about the YuYu movies, but if you're telling me what you're telling me, then obviously don't go into them. But like Naruto does the same thing, Bleach does the same thing, One Piece does the same thing. There are very few anime series out there that'll put out a movie and say, this is completely canon, even if it's not in the thing. Like My Hero Academia has done that. Both its movies are completely canon, even though they don't talk about them in the series. It's just one of those things where like, yeah, this completely happened. You just acknowledge that happened. And you're like, okay, well, you have to kind of listen for those announcements. Like same thing with every Naruto movie that has ever been made up to this point. Only one of them is canon, and that was the last one they did. And it's just kind of, the last two. They did Boruto, the movie as well, but then they just made that into the series. So I guess it doesn't really matter. But it's one of those things where I know that it has like a stage play and stuff like that.
Yes,
where
the stage play is new, so...
Yeah, that just came out. But I mean, like I said, my final thoughts on it are I like the series overall. It's just harder to grab me. I have to stick with it. I just don't know if I'm going to be able to stick with it, especially with the fact that we keep watching different animes all the time. There are other stuff that we want to watch, so maybe down the line I'll pick it back up again.
I hope you do. I think that once that ball really starts rolling, I think you'll enjoy it.
Probably.
If for nothing else than just watching the really cool fight scenes, because there's some really good fight choreography later on.
Yeah, I'm just one of those people that whenever I watch something, I like to have the whole story. My wife hates me for that, where she'll be like, hey, I've never seen the first one, but we're going to go see the second movie in theater. And I'm like, no, you have to see the first one. Otherwise it doesn't make sense. Even if it doesn't apply and you don't need the information at all, it's just one of those things where I'm that type of person. So I'd have to stick through it. And that's the overall grind. It's one of the reasons why it's so hard for me to get back into One Piece.
God, but I tried so hard. I had a window open on my computer that had all of the filler episodes highlighted in blue. There was so much blue. I mean, I had one of those for Gintama as well when I tried to watch it from the beginning, and I was like, I like the filler episodes too much to skip them. And And I just looked at the episode list and I just kind of like shied away from that.
Some series do it better. I mean, we'll probably tackle it one day, but like My Hero Academia has like 3 filler episodes total, which is one of the things I really like about that series, is they do really well. But even with those filler episodes, they still have something that's important because they bring in like the author to come and write that filler episode. So I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah.
But I think overall, my final opinion, again, I like it. It's just I'll hopefully get back into it. Final thoughts.
Well, my final thoughts is this is still one of my favorite animes of all time, so we know where that ranks for me. But I also understand that not everyone has the same taste, so I try to keep that in mind. Just remember, Kurama is best boy. I don't take constructive criticism.
Jason, what do you think?
I actually consider this one just like kind of one of the staples of anime, just because when it came along and what platform it was on for American audiences. So I understand that love that a lot of people have for it. And honestly, it was one of the ones that kind of got me, we'll check out a little bit more of this besides just Dragon Ball Z.
Well, currently, Yu Yu Hakusho is currently licensed under Funimation. It has been on tons of other stuff, but it is licensed under Funimation, so you can go and watch it on their app. The whole series is there, or like I did, I just bought it off of iTunes.
Yep, they also have DVD sets for the whole series and Blu-ray sets for the whole series if you want nice, pretty ones. And the OVAs will be coming out, I believe, later this year, so that American audiences can finally watch it.
On our next episode, normally we would alternate between who gets to pick watching, but we're going to let Jason pick this week.
Yeah!
Jason, what anime are we watching next?
You are watching one of my personal favorites, Van Dread. This is one of my top 5 favorite anime.
Okie doke. Next time we come back, we'll be watching Van Dread.